Congratulations, you made it through like 90% of the composition videos to where now you're actually going to be able to start composing music. And I'm going to show you how to compose something that sounds like this. Warning, this is a lot of work. So before we get into it, I'm going to do something that I've yet to see other composers do, at least not that frequently. I'm going to be very, very transparent with my working process. So before we get into I think it was 36 steps that I went from like nothing to composing that, let's get into questions that I am almost certain you have going through the back of your mind if you are a new composer. Question one, how long did it take me to get to this point? 25 hours, give or take. Now that was spread over the course of 3 weeks. The song loops twice is about 3.5 minutes long, meaning one loop of the song is about 1 minute and 45 seconds. Most music that you write, you will not have 25 hours to just make a piano reduction for 1 hour and 45 seconds. Not the case. You might for maybe a key song here and there where you can really just dig in and go crazy with it. But by and large, the cost to time ratio to compose that just isn't feasible for most of the work that you're going to be doing. Which leads me to the next question I'm sure you have. Why did you write something that takes so long to write when that's not what we're going to be faced with on the day to day? All right, hear me out. One, as I mentioned, it is plausible that you may need to write something that really is front and center and demands the most of your musical expertise and therefore a little bit more time. Two, we've also gone through a lot in this course, and I want to show you something that pulls a little bit from everything that we've learned in composition, so that way you can hear it and see how it ties together. Bear in mind, this song, and I'm going to pull it up, this song comes from our mix sheet template, which has 10 separate parts. This song leverages time signature changes, modal changes, functional harmony, modal harmony, suspensions and atonality, and chromatic medians, which we haven't gotten to yet, but I will teach that in the following video when I show you how to write some cool transitions. Various chords, extensions, like the whole gambit. It's a very complex song to then be shoved into a 1 minute and 45 second piece and still sound good without being overly complex. And then three, I'm going to push you. I want you to end this course writing something that you didn't even think you were able to write by the end of it. I want to push your limits to make you a better composer. I want you to utilize tools and think in ways that you didn't think you were capable of thinking of. I want to demystify the process of making moving, meaningful music. And it requires getting your hands on a bunch of different tools. And it requires me using those tools I'm showing you to say like, hey, like here's actually how I'm really maxing out on something. And so there's a byproduct of that, that by demanding so much of you, when you write a magnum opus, a very complicated, amazing piece of work, that when you do have to write the songs, where you have to create a minute or two of orchestration and you only have a day to do it, it's going to be that much easier because you know the foundational building blocks and can put all those things together. But if you need to write something more complex, you can then be able to take those foundation building blocks and spend more time of it. So basically, by starting you at level 10, my objective was to show you that you're able to also write at level 1, which is, a lot of times where you're going to have to write. And then finally, like, I wanted to write something that I was proud of. Like, this was just as much fun for me as I hope it is for you. And I wanted to leave this course with the same thing, to outdo myself and write something that I've never written. Music is a journey that you want to get better and outdo yourself from the last best piece that you've done. And as much as I want to challenge you with that, I find it equally, if not more demanded of me as the one who's facilitating this class. All right, question number 3. How did all this just come out of your head? It didn't. I started with very elementary ideas, and you're going to see those in the video. And then I iterated. I'll show you, like, here are just all the composing files that I did for this song. And I'll just open up a random one so you can see. I mean, if I zoom in, here we go. If I zoom in, I mean, you see just like renditions of renditions of renditions of motifs, and then I take those and I flush them out, and then I get to another point, and then I open up a new file. There was a lot of repetition. I also spent a lot of time looking at my favorite musicians and listening to their music and reading their sheet music. When I heard something, I'm like, oh, I wish I could have this feeling or this texture in this part of the song, but I don't know how to do it. But I've heard a song that does something similar. Let me see what they've done. And if you remember at the beginning of the course, I had you create this mix sheet template to show like all of your inspiration and where your favorite parts are and why. It's because this is the point where you're going to get stuck and you're going to need some help. Remember, great artists copy. No, good artists copy, great artists steal. It's a thing. I'm not copying note for note, but I'm like, oh, they got this texture by using these arpeggios, or they use like these triplets over a straight beat to get this sort of movement. Like, you have to look at people who've done this before and then be fluent in music enough to be able to read and understand what they've done. That's also why I've been teaching you music theory, so that way you can arm yourself and be able, if you don't know what's going on, be able to read and figure it out, so that way you can use it in your own pieces. I used theory to get me out of some really tight spots. See on this board over here, me writing things down. I'm just like, oh, I have this piece and I don't want to move keys here, and I like this piece, but I don't know how to put them together. How? Then I would actually sit down and write up my theory. Very rarely is what happened to that, though. I usually use theory more as like a diagnostic. And then finally, I mean, honestly, a big part of it's an experience. I am not a professional composer by trade. I've just been doing it as a hobby for almost 2 decades now. So I'm not forced in those environments that require me to think this way very quickly yet. But that said, I want to be able to do these things faster. That's something that I'm working on. And if I were to break those 25 hours into like how much was spent doing each piece, an hour or two is writing out this initial plan, as I've mentioned in the beginning videos. Probably another 5 hours was making some very basic melodies to fill out each of the parts on the sheet to get an idea. But that puts us at 7 hours. 10 hours was looking at other musicians and seeing what they were doing to make those pieces that I wrote even better. So that puts us at 17 hours. 5 hours was just writing transitions in between those parts. So that puts us at 22 hours. 2-3 hours was about what I did, creating it to where it could only be played by a single person. And I'm going to touch into the one-man philosophy next. There you go, 25 hours. As you can see, like really only 10 of those hours is actually me writing my own stuff. A lot of it was planning and referencing other material and cleaning things up. Okay, last thing, and then I promise we're gonna get into actually writing this. By the way, this video was gonna be at least 6 hours long, so I know this seems like a lot, but I'm giving you a lot of information and throwing a whole bunch of stuff in here very quickly. So bear with me. Whatever this turns out to be, I guarantee is shorter than 6 hours. So the one-man philosophy. To give you a quick story behind this, I was a prog metal musician. My whole thing was writing complexity for the sake of complexity. I want to show people like, oh, look at all this cool stuff that I can do. It still kind of comes out that way, and I'm working on it, on reeling it back. But I had taken a 5 or 6 year hiatus from music, and I met this folk musician. He was an older guy in his 70s, and I was just trying to get back into playing with people. And me as a prog guy, was just like folk, like whatever. I just got to strum some basic chords. Ha ha ha! Jokes on me, because this gentleman taught me so much about the process of songwriting, and the one rule that has stuck to me so fiercely in all this time is if a song can't be played by one person, it's not good. Now, I can argue that a little bit, but let's just simplify, like, yes, that's the full and total truth. What he meant by that is if the core of your song needs to be covered up by like all these different things that you're gonna need like 50 million people to play, the basis of your song isn't really all that sound. I mean, I challenge anybody to write a song that sticks up from the crowd using only the most basic of chords. It's a very hard thing to do. And it taught me to never, ever, ever mistake simplicity of music for quality of music. When I wrote this song, there's a lot going on, but I purposely made it to where there's no intervals that make it to where a human on the piano cannot play these things and they're not using like 11 fingers at the same time, because it forces me to think in simpler chords, in simpler voicings, to think about proper voice leading, to think about a good solid structure of the song. And even in the most crazy decorative parts of that song, you could still probably hum it. Like even that middle, that dun 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 dun. You can still hear that, even though there's all these arpeggios and crazy things going on, which yes can be played by a very good pianist, but one very good pianist. So keep that in mind when you write. Okay, I have 36 steps to share with you that I've recorded as I save this every step of the way, and we're going to walk through each and every one of them to show you how I got to this composition. So, without further ado, let's dive in to my beautiful, beautiful song, my beautiful work of art. So, step one, I made a ton of motifs, and they are very simple. Listen, if it'll play. Oh, that's not going. Right? That. I mean, these are not like anything wild by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, some of them are just me messing around. Like they're not good. But again, as I mentioned, this is quantity over quality. Okay, so enough of that. So now let's move into step the second. I found a motif that I liked and I experimented with it. So here's the original. I'm like, all right, well, what happens if I try it? I think this one was like only major or minor, but we'll hear the different ones. So that's the first one. But yeah, and I'm like, all right, cool. I have these. And I was thinking about going back to my sheet here, like, how does this go into, describing each of these moments in the song? And does it tickle any of these feelings that I'm trying to go after? Right? Like the looming air of the all powerful martial kingdom. Does this give a sense of looming and authoritarianism? This particular one, no, but was used in other parts of the song. So cool. So I have this long motif, and I'm like, all right, well, that's too much to play the same way all the time. So let me break this into smaller, simpler parts. So you can hear how that came from do, 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 that do, 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 right? And I'm experimenting with that. Cool. Enough of that. So at that moment, I created some leitmotifs. Again, leitmotifs are motifs that represent characters or places or things like that. And I built basic harmonies using pedal tones and those chord tones. And so this was the first full piece of music that I wrote. If this will show, why is it not playing? Oh, maybe because there's no volume. Yeah, so it's like not even really in time. But I was just kind of playing around with it. But you get the idea. It's like, okay, it's done, dun, 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 dun. Cool. So then I researched my favorite composers to give me ideas on how to spice up my song. And I saw a lot of them were using more powerful like octaves in the bass, some arpeggios, and so I got this. So already you can see that sounds like, ooh, that's like went from night and day compared to what I had by myself. Listen to your favorite composers. Trust me, trust me, trust me. They will help you so, so, so very much. Okay, next. So meanwhile, as I was taking that motif and altering them to fit the mood of the part of the song that I was in, so again, like now I kind of had this martial part in the bass line that I wanted to represent like that evil kingdom. But that do 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 like kind of that do 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 that little motif is what I really want to capture in this like little line here. Cool. So then I altered older motifs to have more interesting chords using modal harmony, which we learned before. So going back to this first part, you'll see the bass line begins to change a little bit. All right. So then I start filling in other sections of my song. So for victory, I use my original motif loops at the beginning. So just to give you a little recap, right? That leap is very important. And so I begin to turn that into some really, really cool, powerful, thick chords. See that? Dun, 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 dun. Just a different key, but still that interval. I want to contrast that with the downward. So that's like my hero theme, but I want to contrast that with the downward motif that I wrote for like my evil villain theme. And then I put them together and you get this really cool chord progression. And then I also look at composers again, be like, all right, I have this really cool chord, but how can I spice it up? And we're going to get into some like cool John Williams stuff as well. Hitoshi Sakimoto is another person I listen to a lot, but they use triplets over a straight like eighth note, 16th note bass line. So then doing this, I just alter the parts a little bit to make it playable by one person and kind of spice up the triplets by doing arpeggios. But these are all the same chords They're just played in different ways. All right, so now I want to repeat this and make it interesting, but still playable by one person. So I alter the bass line and the triplets on the top line and just have them played a little bit differently, but they're still the same chords and they're able to be played by one person. And again, I'll just highlight these top chords just so you can hear them, but they're all the same chords. That's what the right hand's doing, but you can, like, one person can play that. It'd have to be fast, but they can play it. So then I took two ideas from different motifs, and there was like the melody and then this chromatic triplet that I have. You'll hear it in a section, and I thought I really liked how it sounded. So let me just preview this for you quick. Yeah, I love that so much. So you can kind of hear that, you know, these like rhythmic patterns in that chromatic triplet down. That's a John Williams thing that I've heard a couple times. The problem is that it was kind of hard to write out of, so I needed to figure out a way to transition in and out of it. So I wrote some chords that exit that da 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 da, and then bring you back up. It's kind of like this bounciness, that da 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 da, like it's inferring a triplet the entire time, so it fits well together. All right. Then I created rhythmic elements I'd use later to tie everything together in the bass. That do 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 do, that in the bass, that's what we're looking for. And so together you can hear how I was able to pull all this together and make it sound fluid and cohesive. So I had this like intro part and this middle part that I showed and this like cool like high intensity part, but they were disjointed. Okay, so really cool parts, but they need to flow together. And again, I had, you know, all these other things to write too. So I need to, you know, spice them up and be able to tell the story a little bit more cohesively. So I need transitions. Again, we'll work on those in the next video, giving you some tips. Kind of, you know, if you have just like, if you've been doing your homework, you may have a lot of disparate blocks and put them together, but they may sound disjointed. And I'll give you some tips to make transitions. By the way, transitions are, I think, the hardest thing to write. Oh, but are they the most rewarding for sure? So I found a great opportunity to introduce a victorious version of the party motif that I plan to use at the end. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm about to write a transition, and a motif is a great way to tie distant sections of the music together. So here's what that motif sounds like. Again, it's that different notes that do 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 do, but it's that like that perfect fifth upward, again, big John Williams thing. And in the context, it can be used as its own unique motif. So then I mirrored the step up and so the step down like normal. Do 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 do. That step downward is what was originally there, but then I mirrored. So I forget what interval that was, but instead of, we'll say it's a major third, instead of doing a major third down, I would do a major third up. So you still get that like pedigree of what that interval is. It sounds cool, so. Do 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 do. That's it. That's what I wanted. All right. So, so now I need to like tie these things together, and I decided that I was going to use open chords that, and what I mean by open chords is chords that don't have a third in it or a sixth. Thirds and sixths are called mediants, by the way, or mediants and submediants, technically, if we're talking about functional harmony. Anyway, point of the fact is, think like having a root note and a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth and a root note, right? These are just your most stable elements, and that root 4, 5, root 4 or 5, whatever, right? Those are so open, they're kind of like flavorless, but they're very stable, that they're great chord to junction multiple keys together, and also just fill out the sound without altering the mood of it too much. So now I have this. And those open chords are carrying the bass. Right? So like these are those open chords I'm talking about, and I'll actually zoom into one. Right, boom. These are just ones. This here is G, C to G, that's a 5, and I have an E to B, that's another 5. They're just two fifth chords stacked on top of each other. And they sound really, really beautiful. All right. So then I created another transition using mediants and atonality. So again, atonality is like I'm not really trying to force my way into a key. Chromatic mediants is, again, chromatic mediants and atonality we're going to learn in the next video. I promise they're super fun to work with. In short, you take chromatic mediants is you take your mediant notes. So like in the key of C, you have E as your mediant and A as your submediant, your 3 and your 6th, and you can move them down chromatically. So instead of having C major, you have C minor. Instead of A minor, you have A major. You can then have E minor, but maybe make it E major or E flat minor or E flat major, or A minor goes to A major, A flat minor, A flat major, right? So it's just those mediants and submediants, you're just scrambling them a little bit. They work really well. Atonality is just saying, hey, C, I know you want C, D, E, F, G, A, B. I'm going to play whatever the fart I want. But you got to use it sparingly. There's a couple tricks to make it sound good. So here's what this sounds like. Cool. And then I added that motif because I'm like, oh, dude, that motif, that like victorious motif on top of this really chaotic part could just give the sense of like manic ugh to it. So I did, and I love how this came out. So I liked how this part came out. After that, I didn't like it, so you'll notice it gets changed a little bit later on. So, so yeah, anyway, so that end of the transition was weak. I had changed chords to play it properly, a little bit of experimenting, but then I have this. Cool. And like you hear this. Dun 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 dun. Right, that was this transition I had to write in there, but I just saw, all right, like what's the chord that I have here, and what's the chord I'm going into, and then how can I use these types of harmony and modulations that we learned in earlier lessons to make this really cool, seamless transition while upholding, hey, like these feelings. Like you kind of have that dissonance, which is the party approaches and the battle gets near, it has anxiety. But then there's this minute, this little section where you have this sense of hope and bravery where the people remember why they're fighting, and then you get into that party clash. So, right, anxiety, party clash, oop, party clash. But then you have this like minute, this, they're not even minute, the second of like they don't have to be super long. It could just be this moment, just like we're getting into it. So anyway, let's keep going. So then I wrote the main part of the song, reintroducing the main motif played both ways, marching up and down. Yeah, sounds like this. Cool. And you're going to hear that do 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 motif on top of this. So you'll hear everything begin to come together. And this 36 is I just kind of have some like nice chords to pull into the intro. So here's what this last part sounds like. So you hear that dun 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 dun. That's like that visual motif that we heard. That dun dun. That like more victorious party, like they've come through it motif with some chords to taste. But now I need more transitions because I need to end like that battle and get into here. So yeah, so I have. And this is what it sounds like together. And so now it flows in. Cool. So then I'm like, oh, you know, but this ending part still sounds a little bland, but I don't want it to be as crazy as the other parts. So I just gave it some really nice, pretty chords. Beautiful. But it's a game song, so I need it to loop back to the beginning. More transitions, baby. And so with that, I'm actually like, I kind of I like that. So I'm just going to make that downward part the beginning of the song. That's for later, but let's hear the ending of this chord progression, and then as it goes down into, we're going. So here's the end, and here's the beginning. I know, super Tarantino of me. Awesome. So now I have everything. And here is the whole freaking kit and caboodle. The problem is, as much as I tried to make it playable by one person, it's not playable by one person. And the MIDI is like really sloppy. Like here, I'll pull, or the sheet music's just crazy sloppy. There's just like all these weird 16th notes just everywhere. And if I handed this to somebody, they'd pull a gun on me. But it sounds really cool, so I still want to keep it. So let's hear this. And actually, I think it sounds better than the playable one. But again, the playable one has a different purpose. This one, I think, captures more of the feel of what I want. So here's what it sounds like. Awesome. So then that means that the final stage was just cleaning up the MIDI. And like here, I'll show you. I'm gonna open this up. And like that looks so much more readable. Like I can give it to somebody. All right, so this is the old. Oh wait, no, it's not. This is actually mine. I lie. But even still, like, why is there? Oh, because that weird. Oh, because I have some like grace notes in there that I'd take away, but I didn't want to pull those out. So some of these are like little grace notes that this just can't pick up. But by and large, like this is much cleaner MIDI, and I could take this and copy it and tweak it a little bit more. But by and large, like I think somebody would definitely be able to make understand all this. Cool. So yeah, so I tighten it up, and this is now the final output. That's the process. Again, getting from nothing to that final output, about 25 hours. But I hope this gave you more insight as to what the composition process was. As always, you got homework, and that homework is I want you to write and put together your sections and take time on it. Make this something that you're going to be proud of. After that, we're going to get into how to make transitions in the next video using some really cool things like chromatic medians and atonality. Those are my favorite things to work with. So I hope this has helped. I hope this has given you a little bit more insight into the process and the very unglamorous means of composing, but some of the very rewarding bits that come out of it, and seeing how music transforms from a very simple, completely out of time, not on my main instrument, piano, just throwing shit at the wall, to being able to turn into something like that. And then we're going to learn how to orchestrate it next. And then mix and match is going to sound so freaking cool. Also, if you haven't, this is part of a free video course. Please sign up for that. Link in the description. I'm teaching music theory for free, so you can go from nothing to composing a full orchestral score with no music experience. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye.